Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku got transported to Night City and met his alternate self. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. Miyazudafu, Japan. Time, 2014. The air tasted of ozone and burnt sugar. It was the specific, acrid flavor of a quirk pushed beyond its absolute limit, fricative energy rubbing against the raw laws of physics. Izuku Midoriya vaulted over the parapet of a 10-story office building, the concrete crumbling into dust under the reinforced iron soles of his boots. He didn't look down. He didn't have to. The pressure in the back of his skull, the sharp, buzzing sting of danger sense, painted a 360-degree map of the battlefield in his mind more clearly than his eyes ever could. Deku! He's cycling the energy again. Get clear! Eraserhead's voice crackled over the comms, distorted by static. The pro-hero was 3 blocks away, eyes bleeding as he tried to keep the villain's secondary quirks erased, but the distance was too great. I can't let him discharge here, sensei. Izuku shouted back, wind whipping his words away. The evacuation zone isn't clear. If that generator goes critical, it takes out 4 city blocks. Below him, suspended in the center of the intersection, the villain known as Nullpoint screamed. It wasn't a scream of anger. It was the terrified shriek of a man whose body was becoming a doorway to somewhere else. Nullpoint's skin was cracking, purple fissures weeping white light that distorted the air like heat haze. He had stolen a warp generation device from a support lab, thinking he could amplify his own minor teleportation quirk. He was wrong. He wasn't amplifying it. He was breaking reality. Izuku engaged one for all, full cowl. Green lightning arced violently around his limbs, tearing at the sleeves of his costume. The power hummed in his veins, a familiar, comforting ocean of strength. 5th user. I need capture. Now. Black whip exploded from his forearms, 6 tendrils of smoky black energy lashing out, seeking purchase on the surrounding buildings. With a thought, Izuku yanked, turning his freefall into a slingshot maneuver. The G-force pressed his eyes back into his skull, but he gritted his teeth, spinning in midair. Smoke screen! Purple fog billowed from his gauntlets, flooding the street to blind the villain's erratic firing lines. But danger sense flared again, a spike of pain so sharp Izuku gasped. Not an attack. An implosion. The warp generator strapped to Nullpoint's chest began to whine. The sound wasn't audible so much as felt, a vibration that rattled Izuku's teeth and made his vision blur. The white light turned inverted, a sucking void of absolute black. Midoriya, pull back. All Might's vestige roared in his subconscious. No! Izuku gritted out. If I hit the containment unit with a precision smash, I can separate him from the battery before the reaction goes critical. It was a gamble. A terrible one. But looking down through the smoke, Izuku saw a bus stuck in the gridlock, faces pressed against the glass in terror. He didn't hesitate. He never did. F.A. Gene. Load. Release. He stacked the kinetic energy he built up from the swinging, compounding it with 45% of one for all. He became a blur, a green comet streaking toward the singularity growing in the middle of the street. Nullpoint looked up, eyes entirely white. Help me! He wailed, his voice sounding like it was coming from underwater. I've got you! Izuku reached out, his hand open, aiming not to strike the villain, but to shatter the harness of the machine. His fingers brushed the cold metal of the generator. The world stopped. There was no explosion. No heat. No sound. Just a sudden, violent inversion of gravity. The sensation was akin to being pulled through a straw. Izuku felt his physical form stretching, the atoms of his body screaming as they were disassembled and reassembled in the span of a microsecond. The voices of the vestiges, usually a constant, murmuring chorus in the back of his mind, screamed in unison, and then, silence. Absolute, terrifying silence. The green lightning died. The sunlight of Miyazudafu vanished. Somewhere else. Time unknown. Pain. That was the first thing. A dull, throbbing ache that seemed to resonate in the marrow of his bones. It felt as though he had been used as a punching bag by a Nomu for 3 hours straight. The second thing was the smell. Miyazudafu smelled like ocean salt, exhaust, and cleaning agents. This place smelled like wet garbage, stale urine, synthetic grease, and cheap noodles. It was a heavy, cloying scent that coated the back of his throat. Izuku gasped, his lungs burning as he inhaled thick, smoggy air. He coughed violently, rolling onto his side. Something sharp dug into his ribs. He blinked his eyes open, expecting to see the asphalt of the intersection or the white ceiling of a hospital room. Instead, he was staring at a puddle of neon-reflecting sludge. In the reflection, a holographic koi fish, the size of a bus, swam through the air above him, glitching and stuttering as it passed. What? He pushed himself up. His gloves were stained with grime. He was in an alleyway, but not one he recognized. The walls were impossibly high, towering megastructures of concrete and steel that blotted out the sky. Pipes hissed steam, leaking fluids onto the trash-strewn ground, and the noise. It was a wall of sound. Distant sirens that sounded like digital screeches, thumping bass from a club, the hum of heavy machinery, and 100 overlapping voices shouting in a mix of languages, Japanese, English, Spanish, and something that sounded like a hybrid of all three. Izuku stumbled to his feet, clutching his head. He tapped the comms unit in his ear. Eraserhead? Endeavor? Can anyone hear me? Static. Not the static of a blocked signal, but the dead, hollow hiss of a frequency that didn't exist. All Might? He whispered internally, reaching for the connection to One for All. The power was there. The stockpile of strength sat in his core like a sleeping dragon, but the connection to the vestiges was severed. The room inside his mind was dark. He couldn't feel the fourth's anxiety or the first's determination. He was alone. Truly alone for the first time in a year. Okay, Deku. Analyze, he muttered, his habit of muttering taking over to stave off the panic. The warp generator triggered a spatial displacement. I'm not in the blast zone. The architecture suggests a metropolitan area, but the density is far beyond Tokyo. The holographic technology, it's advanced. Far more advanced than an island. He limped toward the mouth of the alley, keeping to the shadows. His hero costume, usually a symbol of comfort, felt conspicuous here. The dark green tactical suit was torn at the shoulder, and his iron soles clanked too loudly on the wet concrete. He reached the edge of the alley and froze. He wasn't in Kansas anymore. He wasn't even in Japan. At least, not the Japan he knew. The street was a canyon of neon. Buildings stretched up into the smog, disappeared into the clouds, and connected by skybridges. Cars didn't just drive. Massive, armored vehicles levitated on thrusters, while sleek, angular bikes tore through traffic. But it was the people that made Izuku's blood run cold. A man walked by with a jaw made of chrome, his eyes glowing red optics. A woman with 4 arms, metallic, sleek arms, not a mutation quirk, was arguing with a vendor who had a television screen embedded in his chest. Quirks? Izuku thought, eyes wide. No. That's not biology. That's machinery. Everyone is part machine. He watched a group of teenagers walk past. They looked like delinquents, but their skin was plated with gold and silver, wires visible beneath the surface of their necks. One of them had legs that bent backward, like a raptor, purely mechanical. Where the hell am I? A sudden spike drilled into his skull. Danger sense. It wasn't the specific, directional warning he was used to. It was a dull, pervasive throb, as if the entire city was hostile. But then, it sharpened into a needlepoint, directed from deeper within the alley he had just left. Izuku spun around. Please! I don't have the eddies, I swear! The voice was high-pitched, terrified. A woman. Izuku didn't think. The analysis paralysis vanished, replaced by the instinct that had been burned into him since the day he rushed the sludge villain. He kicked off the ground, using 5% of full cowl to dash back into the darkness. The alleyway, Kabuki Market subsector. 3 men had cornered a woman against a dumpster. She was clutching a bag to her chest, her cybernetic arm, an older, rusty model, sparking at the elbow joint. The men were terrifying. They wore heavy leather and plastic armor, their faces obscured by optical visors that glowed a sickly green. One of them, a hulk of a man, had a lower jaw that was entirely mechanical, stripped of synthetic skin to reveal the servos and pistons. We don't want your eddies, gonk, Jawface growled, his voice modulated and metallic. We want the chrome. That arm's vintage. Collectors pay for the servos. Scavs, the man on the left hissed. He held a jagged, electrified knife. Cut her. Let's strip it here. I hate this district. Too close to Mock's territory. Leave her alone. The shout echoed off the wet walls. The three men turned, their optics whirring as they zoomed in on the figure standing at the other end of the alley. Izuku stood in his combat stance, green lightning crackling softly around his body. He tried to project the authority of a pro hero, but in this dingy, rain-slicked alley, he looked like a cosplayer who had taken a wrong turn. Let her go, Izuku said, his voice steady. I won't ask twice. Jawface tilted his head, scanning Izuku. What the? Look at this kid. Is that a bodysuit? Hey chums, scan him. The third man, a skinny guy with wires trailing from his eye sockets, laughed. Zero's cyberware. He's completely Ganic. Look at the muscle density though. What is he? Some kind of gene-modded pet. Doesn't matter. Jawface racks the slide on a heavy, devastating-looking shotgun. Organic parts sell too. Kidneys, liver, fresh meat goes for a high price on the black market. Izuku's eyes narrowed. They weren't intimidated. In his world, glowing with power usually made thugs hesitate. Here, they looked at him like he was a walking ATM. Last warning, Izuku said. Jawface pulled the trigger. The boom was deafening, far louder than a standard firearm. The slug was meant to tear through car doors, but Izuku moved. He didn't need 100%. He didn't even need 20%. At 8%, he was faster than the human eye could track. He sidestepped the slug, the air pressure from the passing bullet ruffling his hair. In a blur of green motion, he closed the distance. Don't kill them. Just incapacitate. Izuku aimed a chop at Jawface's wrist, intending to numb the nerves and force him to drop the gun. His hand connected with the man's forearm. Clang. It wasn't flesh. It was reinforced titanium. Izuku's eyes widened. He had pulled the punch, expecting bone. The impact barely dented the metal plating. What the? Jawface grunted, swinging the shotgun like a club. Izuku ducked under the swing, pivoting on his heel. He's heavy. Slower than me, but durable. I need to hit harder. Detroit. Smash! He upped the output to 15%, driving a fist into the man's solar plexus. This time, the metal buckled. Jawface gasped, a horrible, mechanical wheeze, and flew backward, crashing into a pile of trash bags. The other two scavs didn't panic. They didn't flee. They attacked with a coordinated, predatory speed that shocked Izuku. The knife wielder lunged, his movements jerky and unnatural. Sandevistan? Izuku didn't know the word, but he recognized the speed enhancement. The man was moving fast, his nervous system overclocked. Izuku activated Black Whip, two tendrils shooting out to snag the attacker's ankle. He yanked, slamming the man into the wet pavement. What is that? The third scav screamed, backing up. Is that monowire? No, it's energy. Stay down. Izuku commanded, standing between the scavs and the terrified woman. I am a hero. Surrender now and I'll hand you over to the police. The scavs paused. Then they laughed. It was a cruel, hacking sound. Police? Jawface hauled himself up, oil leaking from his chest plate. NCPD don't come down here, kid. You're in the jungle now. He tapped a port on his neck. His eyes flashed red. Inhibitors off. Kill him. Suddenly, their movements changed. They ignored pain. They ignored self-preservation. The skinny one pulled a submachine gun from his coat and opened fire, spraying the alley with lead. Izuku was forced to defend. He grabbed a dumpster lid, holding it up as a shield, the bullets vibrating through his arm. He couldn't get close without risking the woman getting hit in the crossfire. Danger sense screamed. Behind him. He turned just in time to see a fourth scav dropping from the fire escape above, a mantis blade, a literal sword springing from his forearm, aimed right at Izuku's neck. I can't dodge in time. I have to block. Izuku braced himself, preparing to sacrifice his arm to save his neck. ZZT. A sound like a whip crack cut through the rain. A line of neon green light flashed through the darkness, thinner than a hair but brighter than a laser. The Skav falling from the air suddenly stopped screaming. His head slid cleanly off his shoulders. His body tumbled past Izuku, crashing into the wet ground with a wet thud. Izuku froze, horror washing over him. He had seen violence, he had seen death, but this was cold, clinical execution. Sloppy, a voice said. It was a voice that sounded like grinding gravel, processed through a cheap synthesizer. But underneath the distortion, it sounded familiar. A figure landed on top of the dumpster Jawface had been thrown against. The stranger was wearing a dark green, high-collared jacket with the sleeves torn off, revealing arms that were heavily cybernetic, gunmetal gray muscle fibers woven with exposed wiring. He wore black cargo pants tucked into heavy, magnetic combat boots. But it was the face that made Izuku stop breathing. The figure wore a cowl. It was a jagged, nightmare version of Izuku's own mask. The ears were longer, sharper, resembling broken antennas. The mouth guard was a heavy respirator unit with glowing vertical slits. And the eyes were mismatched optics. The left was a standard tactical green. The right was a swirling, chaotic vortex of red data streams. The stranger raised a hand. From his wrist, a monowire, a filament of superheated wire, retracted with a hiss. Who? Izuku stammered. The remaining scavs looked at the newcomer and turned pale. Oh shit, Jawface whispered, taking a step back. It's the rabbit. It's Usagi. You scavs are like cockroaches, the stranger Usagi said. He tilted his head, the red optic whirring as it zoomed in. You infest every corner of this city. Wakako said this alley was clean. We're leaving. The skinny Scav yelled, dropping his gun. We didn't know it was your turf. Usagi didn't move. He just pointed a finger. You touched a civilian. We didn't flatline her. You touched her. Usagi vanished. To Izuku's eyes, it looked like a warp. But it wasn't. It was speed. Raw, mechanical acceleration. A Sandovistan pushed to the jagged edge of cyberpsychosis. Usagi appeared behind the skinny Skav. A sickening crunch echoed as a piston-enhanced elbow drove into the man's spine. The Skav folded the wrong way and dropped. Jawface roared and raised his shotgun, but Usagi was already moving. He slid under the barrel, his legs sweeping out. But instead of a kick, a blade popped from the heel of his boot, slicing through the hydraulic lines of the Skav's legs. Jawface collapsed, oil spurting like blood. Usagi stood over him, raising a heavy pistol, a Militech Omaha, point-blank at the Skav's head. Wait! Izuku screamed. He used full cowl, dashing forward to grab Usagi's arm. Don't kill him! He's defeated! Usagi froze. He looked at Izuku's hand gripping his wrist. Then he looked up at Izuku's face. Under the harsh neon light of a flickering sign above, Izuku's cowl had been torn in the warping process. His face was visible. Usagi stiffened. The red optic on his right eye cycled wildly, focusing, dilating, scanning. What? Usagi's voice dropped, the distortion filter flickering. He shoved Izuku back with shocking strength that rivaled 20% of One for All. Who the hell are you? Usagi demanded, leveling the pistol at Izuku's chest. Who sent you? Arasaka? Is this some sick Biotechnica clone project? Izuku held up his hands, palms open. I don't know who Arasaka is. My name is Izuku Midoriya. I'm a hero. The name hit the stranger like a physical blow. Usagi took a step back, his aim wavering for a fraction of a second. He reached up and unlatched his respirator. A hiss of pressurized air escaped as the mask detached. Izuku gasped. He was looking in a mirror. A cracked, dirty, distorted mirror. The face staring back at him was his own. But it was older. Gaunt. A jagged scar ran from the left corner of his mouth up to his ear, twisting his expression into a permanent, cynical grimace. His skin was pale, lacking the sun-kissed health of the hero student. His hair was the same unruly green-black, but shaved on the sides in a harsh undercut. Midoriya. Usagi whispered, tasting the name like it was poison. That name's dead. Buried in the landfill with the rest of the trash. Sirens began to wail in the distance. Real sirens this time. A MaxTac dropship was overhead, its searchlights sweeping the block. NCPD, Usagi snapped, his demeanor shifting instantly back to professional coldness. He holstered the gun. If they find you here, looking like that, without a biometric ID, they'll flatline you and sell your organs to the cops. Ball. He looked at the civilian woman, who was shaking in the corner. Get out of here. Go to Victor's if that arm needs tuning. Tell him Usagi sent you. Go. The woman scrambled away into the shadows. Usagi turned back to Izuku. The resemblance was uncanny, but the eyes were different. Izuku's eyes held the light of All Might. Usagi's eyes held the crushing weight of Night City. You look like me, Usagi muttered, grabbing Izuku's shoulder with a grip like a hydraulic vice. But you smell like soap and sunshine. It makes me want to vomit. Izuku didn't know what to say. I think I'm from another universe, Usagi snorted. Multiverse theory? Great. Just what this city needs. More complications. He looked at the sky where the drone lights were getting closer. You can fight. I saw that smash. But you're soft. You hesitate. Killing isn't justice, Izuku said firmly. Justice? Usagi laughed, a dry, humorless bark. You really aren't from here. There is no justice in Night City, chum. There's just the hunter and the prey. He pulled a hood over his head, hiding the jagged bunny ears. Come on. If you stay here, the scabs will come back with reinforcements, or MaxTac will turn you into Swiss cheese. I have a safe house in Mega Building H8. Izuku hesitated. This man was a killer. He was dangerous. He was him, but the danger sense was silent when he looked at Usagi. There was no malice directed at him. Just confusion, and a deep, buried well of sadness that resonated with something inside one for all. Okay, Izuku said. Keep up, Usagi said. His spine lit up with a strip of neon green light, a Sandevistan charging up. And don't use that flashy lightning shit unless you want every corp in the district tracking us. Usagi blurred into motion, scaling the fire escape with mechanical precision. Izuku took a deep breath of the smoggy air, channeled 5% into his legs, and followed his shadow into the neon jungle. Mega Building H8, the apartment. Time, 21:45. The ride to the safe house was a blur of terrified observation. They moved across rooftops, avoiding the streets. Izuku saw things that defied explanation. People plugging wires from their wrists into vending machines. Advertisements that were projected directly into the clouds. A shootout between two flying vehicles that no one on the street below even paused to watch. The scale of the inequality was staggering. He saw penthouses that floated in the sky, gleaming with gold, while beneath them, people slept in cardboard boxes huddled around burning trash cans. It was a society where the strong didn't just rule, they literally consumed the weak. They entered the apartment through a window on the 40th floor. The room was small, cluttered, and smelled of stale takeout and gun oil. Weapons were scattered on the table, pistols, tech rifles, grenades. Usagi locked the window and darkened the polarized glass. He threw his jacket onto a chair and sat heavily on a worn-out sofa, watching Izuku with those intense, mismatched eyes. Sit, Usagi commanded, pointing to a crate. Izuku sat. So, Usagi began, pulling a cigarette from a pack and lighting it with the tip of his heated index finger. Let's assume you're not hallucinating. You're Izuku Midoriya. You're a hero. Yes, Izuku said. I'm a student at UA High School. In my world, 80% of the population has superpowers called quirks. Usagi exhaled a plume of blue smoke. Quirks. Cute name. Here, nobody has powers. We have chrome. If you want to run fast, you chop off your legs and buy titanium ones. If you want to think fast, you slot a chip in your brain. He tapped his temple. You're 100% Ganic. My optics scanned you. No ports. No neural link. No shards. Yet you moved fast enough to dodge a slug, and you hit hard enough to dent reinforced plating. That's biologically impossible. It's one for all, Izuku said, instinctively touching his chest. It's a power passed down. Wait. You're me. Or a version of me. Did you never meet All Might? Usagi frowned. All Might? Sounds like a wrestling brand. No. I didn't meet any hero. He leaned forward, the smoke curling around his scarred face. My mom, Inko, she died when I was 7. Izuku's heart stopped. What? She got sick, Usagi said flatly, staring at the floor. Lung rot. Common in this district. We didn't have the eddies for a trauma team platinum card. The ambulance didn't come because our subscription lapsed. She coughed up blood until she drowned in it, right in our kitchen. Izuku gripped his knees, his knuckles turning white. Tears pricked his eyes. I'm so sorry. Don't be, Usagi said, his voice hardening. That's when I learned. Nobody is coming to save you. Not the police. Not the Corps. And definitely not some hero. You save yourself, or you die. He stood up and walked to a mirror, staring at his own reflection, then at Izuku. I was quirkless, weak. The kids in the neighborhood called me Deku. Useless. Wooden puppet. Kaken. Izuku whispered. Bakugo? Usagi let out a dark chuckle. Yeah. He joined Arasaka Security. Thought he was hot shit. Got flatlined in a corporal war 3 years ago. Took a monoblade to the gut. Izuku felt sick. Katsuki dead? Inko dead? This world was a graveyard of everything he loved. I took the name, Usagi continued. I made it mine. I started running errands for fixers. Saved every penny. Got my first implant at 14. Cheap reflex boosters. Almost killed me with infection, but I got faster. I killed the man who sold my mom the faulty meds. And then I kept killing. He turned to Izuku, his cybernetic eye glowing ominously. Now they call me Usagi. The rabbit. Because I'm fast, I'm jumpy, and I'm hard to kill. I'm an edge runner, Midoriya. I'm a mercenary. I kill people for money. I steal corporate secrets. I do the dirty work that keeps this city spinning. Izuku stood up. But you saved that woman. Usagi paused. He looked away, flickering ash onto the floor. She reminded me of someone. That's all. It was a mistake. Unprofessional. No, Izuku said, stepping forward. He looked into the eyes of this broken, metallic version of himself. It wasn't a mistake. It was instinct. Even here, even after everything, you still have it. Have what? Usagi snapped. The heart of a hero. Usagi stared at him for a long moment. Then, he burst out laughing. It was a harsh, jagged sound. You really are a naive gonk, Usagi said, wiping his eye. Heart doesn't stop bullets, kid. Chrome stops bullets. If you want to survive in Night City, you better lose that idealism fast, or this city will eat you alive and spit out the bones. He tossed a small chip at Izuku. What's this? Izuku asked, catching it. Language shard. Stick it behind your ear. Oh wait, no ports. Useless. Usagi sighed. Look, you can crash here tonight. But tomorrow, we're going to see Victor. My reproduction. We need to figure out what you are, because if Arasaka finds out there's a biological weapon walking around that can punch through tanks without cyberware, they will hunt you to the ends of the earth. Usagi walked to the window, peering out through the blinds at the neon-soaked skyline of Night City. Welcome to hell, Izuku, Usagi whispered. Try not to die. Izuku looked down at his gloved hands. He clenched them into fists. The green lightning sparked faintly, reflected in the dark window. He was lost. He was alone. He was in a world where his mother was dead and his childhood friend was a corpse. But he was still here. I won't die, Izuku said softly to the room. And I won't let you die either, Usagi. Outside, thunder rumbled, mixing with the ceaseless roar of the city that never slept. The glitch in the system had arrived, and Night City was about to find out that some things were stronger than Chrome. Mega Building H8, Japantown. Apartment 0814. Time, 22:30. The door to the apartment hissed shut, the magnetic locks engaging with a heavy, industrial thud that seemed to vibrate through the floor. The sound was final. It was the sound of a cage closing. Inside, the air was stale, recycled through filters that hadn't been changed in months. It smelled of cold noodles, gun oil, and the faint, coppery tang of ozone, a scent that seemed to cling to Usagi like a second skin. Izuku Midoriya stood in the center of the small living space, his red boots squeaking slightly on the synthetic laminate floor. He felt huge in the room. In the expansive gyms of UA, or the wide streets of Muzurufu, his hero costume was a symbol of hope. Here, in this cramped, shadow-drenched box, the bright teal and white of his suit looked ridiculous, like a cartoon character that had wandered into a snuff film. "Don't touch anything," Usagi growled. The alternate Izuku, the chrome rabbit, moved with a twitchy, predatory grace. He bypassed the small kitchenette and went straight to a workbench dominated by a sprawling array of monitors and tools. He didn't sit. He hovered, his mismatched eyes scanning the readout of a local subnet scanner. "Scanning for trackers," Usagi muttered, his voice still carrying that slight synthetic distortion, though he had removed his mask. "If those scavs tagged you, or if you picked up a demon from the local net, we're both flatlined before sunrise." Izuku watched him. He couldn't help it. It was like looking at a ghost. Usagi stripped off his heavy tactical jacket, tossing it onto a pile of Kevlar vests. Beneath, he wore a black tank top that was soaked in sweat and grime. Izuku gasped softly. "What?" Usagi snapped, not turning around. You're back." Usagi's spine was gone. In its place was a column of matte black metal, segmented like a centipede, pulsing with a faint red light. Thick cables ran from the base of his neck into his shoulders, disappearing under the skin. His arms were heavy, reinforced with subdermal plating that made his muscles look blocky and unnatural. "It's a Sandevistan Mark IV reflex booster with a custom spinal mount," Usagi said, his tone bored. "Top of the line 2 years ago. Now? It's practically vintage. But it gets the job done." He turned, leaning back against the desk, crossing his metallic arms. The light from the monitors washed over his face, highlighting the jagged scar that ran from his lip to his ear. It was a brutal wound, one that had healed poorly, pulling his mouth into a permanent sneer. "Sit," Usagi commanded again, pointing to a battered sofa with exposed foam. Izuku sat. The cushions were damp. You replaced your spine?" "I didn't have a choice," Usagi said, reaching for a bottle of water and downing half of it in one gulp. "My organic one got crushed when a Militech heavy suit stepped on me during a gig in Santo Domingo. It was walk with chrome, or crawl in the dirt. I chose to walk." Izuku's analysis brain kicked in, despite his shock. "Spinal replacement. Reflex boosters. That explains the speed. It's not a mutant quirk, it's mechanical augmentation, but the strain on the nervous system must be immense. To integrate that much hardware with the human brain. Why do you look at me like that?" Usagi asked, his eyes narrowing. The red optic aperture on his right eye dialed in and out with a soft whir. "Like what?" "Like you pity me." Usagi spat the words out. "I don't need pity from a cosplayer." "I don't pity you," Izuku said, though a part of him did. "I'm just trying to understand. Where I come from, power is biological. It's part of us. It evolves. Here, power is bought," Usagi corrected. "You want to be strong? You buy gorilla arms. You want to be smart? You slot a shard. You want to be special? You get enough eddies to buy a penthouse in the sky and look down on the rats. That's the hierarchy." Usagi walked over to the fridge, pulled out a full-wrap package, and tossed it to Izuku. "Eat. You're shivering. Probably caloric deficiency from whatever dimension hop you did. It's Sensoi burrito. Tastes like cardboard and cumin, but it keeps the engine running." Izuku unwrapped the food. He was starving. He took a bite. Usagi was right, it was terrible. But he ate it anyway. "So," Usagi said, pulling a chair around and straddling it backward, facing Izuku. He lit a cigarette, the smoke curling blue in the monitor light. "Talk. You said you're a hero? You said your name is Midoriya, but you're not me." "Not really." "I am," Izuku said, swallowing a mouthful of dry tortilla. "I'm Izuku Midoriya. My hero name is Deku." Usagi flinched. The cigarette trembled in his fingers. "Don't use that name." "Why?" "It means you can do it. My friend Uraraka told me that. It changed the meaning for me." Usagi let out a harsh, barking laugh. "Uraraka? The zero-gravity girl? Round face?" Izuku's eyes lit up. "You know her? Is she here? Is she safe?" She's a corporate accountant for Kong Tao, Usagi deadpanned. She lives in the city center. I saw her once, getting into an armored limo. She looked tired. We don't talk. We never really did. In this world, the poor don't mix with the scholarship kids. Izuku's heart sank. And All Might? Never heard of him, Usagi said. We have Morgan Blackhand. Atom Smasher. Rogue. Legends of the Afterlife. Mercenaries who killed enough people to get a drink named after them at the bar. No All Might. No symbol of peace. Usagi took a long drag of the cigarette. This world ended a long time ago, kid. The collapse happened in the 90s. Governments fell, core rose. Now, Arasaka and Militech own everything. The air you breathe, the water you drink, the chrome in your arm. They own it all. But there have to be heroes, Izuku insisted, leaning forward. People who stand up for the weak. Vigilantes? Vigilantes are just murderers who don't get paid, Usagi said coldly. Look, you saved that girl tonight. Good for you. You feel warm and fuzzy? Good. Hold on to that. Because next week, that girl is going to sell you out to a scav for a hit of glitter just to forget where she lives. That's Night City. Izuku looked down at his hands. The scars from his quirk overuse were there. Twisted, gnarled skin. I can't believe that. People are good. They just need hope. Hope is a poison, Usagi whispered. He stood up and walked to the window, peering through the slats of the blinds. Tell me about Mom, Izuku asked quietly. Usagi went rigid. The silence in the room stretched, heavy and suffocating. The only sound was the distant wail of a flying AV passing the building. Inko, Usagi said, his voice dropping an octave. She was the only good thing. He turned around, and for a second, the hardened mercenary mask slipped. Izuku saw a glimpse of the terrified boy beneath the chrome. She worked double shifts at a cannery, Usagi said. My dad took off when I was 4. Disappeared into the Badlands or got zeroed. Who knows? So it was just us. We lived in Watson before the lockdown. It was okay. We were poor, but we had dinner. We watched TV. Usagi rubbed his mechanical elbow, a phantom pain in a limb he no longer had. The smog got her. Lung failure. Acute toxin buildup. It happens to thousands of people every year. But usually, you go to a clinic, get a lung scrub, maybe a synthetic transplant if you have insurance. He looked at Izuku, his eyes burning with a cold fury. We had the basic package. Bronze tear. When she collapsed, I called trauma team. I had the card. I swiped it through the terminal. Usagi mimed the motion, his hand shaking. Denied. Insufficient coverage for Class A resuscitation. The operator told me to upgrade my plan. While my mother was turning blue on the kitchen floor, the operator was trying to upsell me a platinum package. Izuku felt tears prick his eyes. He remembered his own mother, worrying over him, crying fountains of tears when he got into UA. He couldn't imagine a world where she was left to die because of a subscription fee. I screamed at them, Usagi continued, his voice void of emotion now. I told them I'd pay anything. They hung up. She died 3 minutes later. I held her hand until it got cold. I'm so sorry, Izuku choked out. That day, Usagi said, Izuku Midoriya died too. I realized that being good doesn't save you. Being kind doesn't save you. Eddies save you. Power saves you. Violence saves you. He tapped the metal plating on his chest. So I sold everything we had. I bought a cheap pistol. I found the fixer who handled the district. I told him I'd do anything. I started running drugs. Then I started guarding shipments. Then I started zeroing people who got in the way. And with every job, I bought more chrome. Because every piece of metal I put in me made it harder for the world to hurt me. And Kaken? Izuku asked, almost afraid of the answer. Bakugo? Usagi snorted, flicking the cigarette butt into a corner. Bakugo was a rising star in the Arasaka Academy. Top of his class in counterterrorism tactics. He loved the structure. Loved the power. He thought he was going to be the CEO's personal bodyguard one day. Usagi walked back to the table and picked up a heavy handgun, a massive revolver that looked like it could stop a truck. He began to disassemble it with practiced ease. 3 years ago. 4th Corporate War Skirmish. He was leading a squad into a Militech bunker. He was good. Fast. Lethal. But he was arrogant. Usagi slid the barrel back into place with a click. He triggered a tripwire. A smart mine. It didn't kill him instantly. It blew his legs off. His squad, his friends, they left him. Tactical retreat. Arasaka protocol dictates that wounded assets are liabilities. They left him to bleed out in the mud. Izuku felt like he had been punched in the gut. Bakugo, the symbol of victory, abandoned by his own team? I found his body 2 days later, Usagi said quietly. I was scavenging the battlefield for parts. He was small. He died alone, Izuku. He died screaming for backup that didn't exist. Usagi slammed the magazine into the gun. That's your hero's society. The strong eat the weak. And when the strong stumble, they get eaten too. Izuku stood up abruptly. No! That's not how it works. Heroes protect each other. Bakugo, my Bakugo. He's difficult, and he's angry, but he would never abandon a teammate, and we would never abandon him. Your Bakugo isn't here, Usagi snapped, leveling his gaze at Izuku. And neither is your All Might. You are a glitch, Midoriya. A variable in an equation that solved itself a long time ago. You think you can fix this city with a smile and a punch? You're going to get yourself killed. Maybe, Izuku said, his voice trembling but his eyes hard. But I won't stop trying. You said you became a mercenary to survive. But you saved that woman tonight. Why? I told you, don't lie to me. Izuku shouted, causing Usagi to flinch. I'm you. I know how you think. You saved her because you couldn't stand to watch another innocent person die while you did nothing. The metal didn't change your heart, Usagi. It just buried it. Usagi stared at him. The red optic whirred, focusing tight on Izuku's face. For a moment, it looked like he was going to shoot him. The tension in the room was a physical weight. Then, Usagi looked away. He holstered the gun. Get some sleep, he muttered, turning off the main light, leaving them in the blue glow of the monitors. We have to move at dawn. I'm taking you to Victor. He's the only reproduct I trust not to sell your organs while you're under anesthesia. Usagi walked to the corner of the room and sat in a specialized chair, a net-running chair with cooling tubes. He plugged a cable from the chair into the back of his neck. What are you doing? Izuku asked. Cooling down my nervous system, Usagi said, closing his eyes. The Sandevistan burns hot. If I don't regulate, my brain cooks. Don't wake me up unless the building is on fire. And even then, think twice. Izuku watched him for a moment. He saw the subtle tremors in Usagi's hands as he connected the wires. It wasn't just heat. It was stress. It was the weight of a dozen murders and a lifetime of trauma. Izuku sat back down on the sofa. He pulled his knees to his chest. He reached for the connection to One for All again. It was still silent. The vestiges were gone. He was truly alone, but looking at the sleeping form of his alternate self, this broken, chromed mirror, Izuku felt a spark of something familiar. I am here, he thought to himself. I am here, and he is here. And as long as we're breathing, it's not over. Izuku closed his eyes, the neon lights of Night City pulsing through the blinds like a rhythmic, toxic heartbeat. The dreamscape. Time unknown. Izuku wasn't sleeping peacefully. He was drifting in a void. Usually, his dreams were filled with the vestiges of One for All, the smoky throne room, the voices of the past users. But this was different. This was a digital void. Binary code rained from the sky like green blood. The ground was made of circuit boards. In the distance, he saw a figure. It was a massive, towering silhouette of black iron. It had no face, only a single, glowing red eye. It roared, and the sound was the screech of dial-up internet amplified to a deafening volume. Construct detected. A voice boomed. Biological anomaly. Analyze. Dissect. Consume. The figure reached out a hand the size of a building. Then, a blur of green light cut across the void. A small, fast rabbit made of neon wire jumped between Izuku and the giant. The rabbit shrieked, a defiant, glitching sound. Run, idiot! The rabbit shouted with Usagi's voice. Izuku woke up with a gasp. Morning. Time, 6:15. The sun didn't rise in Night City. The sky just turned from black to a sickly, bruised purple. The smog layer was so thick that dawn was just a suggestion. Izuku sat up, his neck stiff. Usagi was already awake. He was disconnected from the chair, doing one-armed push-ups on the floor. His mechanical arm whirred with every rep. You scream in your sleep, Usagi said, not stopping. Bad OPSEC. I had a nightmare. Izuku rubbed his face. We need to go, right? Yeah. Usagi stood up, grabbing a towel to wipe the sweat from his brow. Victor's shop is in Watson. We have to cross a checkpoint. Stay close, keep your hood up, and for God's sake, don't look the cops in the eye. They smell fear. Usagi tossed Izuku a heavy gray trench coat. Put this on. Your costume is a target. You look like a corporate mascot. Izuku pulled the coat on. It smelled like tobacco and rain. It was too big in the shoulders, but it covered his green jumpsuit. Usagi, Izuku said as the mercenary checked his weapons one last time. What? Thank you. For the shelter. Usagi paused. He slotted a fresh magazine into his pistol and holstered it. He didn't look at Izuku. Don't thank me yet, chum. The day hasn't even started. He hit the door release. The heavy locks disengaged. Let's Delta. The streets of Japantown. Time, 7 o'clock. Stepping out of the mega building was an assault on the senses. The street level was a chaotic river of humanity and machinery. Food stalls hissed with steam, vendors shouting prices for synthetic yakitori. Holographic geishas danced on the sides of buildings, advertising braindance experiences. The noise was incredible, a constant thrum of engines, music, and thousands of conversations. Izuku kept his head down, following Usagi's heavy boots. He used his analysis skills to track everything. 3 men on the corner. Gang colors. Tiger claws. Visible cyberware, katanas embedded in forearms. Threat level moderate, drone overhead. NCPD surveillance model. It's tracking movement patterns, civilian with a glazed look. Wirehead. Addicted to digital stimulation. Not a threat. Keep moving, Usagi murmured, guiding Izuku through the crowd with a subtle nudge. Don't stare at the claws. They'll take it as an insult. They have swords in their arms, Izuku whispered. Mantis blades. Standard issue for the triad gangs. Nasty in close quarters. Don't let them get in range. They reached a pedestrian bridge crossing a massive highway. Below, cars zipped by in a blur of light. Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the street below. Traffic screeched to a halt. Gunfire, Izuku said, his head snapping toward the sound. 2 blocks down. Not our problem, Usagi said, gripping Izuku's arm. Keep walking. But, no. Usagi stopped, forcing Izuku to look at him. Listen to me. In your world, you run toward the explosion. Here, that gets you killed. That's probably a gang skirmish or a corporate extraction. If you intervene, you make enemies of both sides. We are ghosts. We don't exist. We don't interfere. Izuku bit his lip. He could feel the vibrations of the fight. He could hear people screaming. Every fiber of his being screamed to go full cowl and leap off the bridge. But he looked at Usagi's face. The scars. The desperation. He realized that Usagi wasn't just protecting himself. He was terrified of losing the only person who understood him. Fine, Izuku said through gritted teeth. We keep moving. They hurried across the bridge, leaving the smoke rising behind them. Misty's Esoterica/Victor's Clinic, Watson District. Time, 8:30. They arrived at a small shop tucked away in a back alley. The sign read Misty's Esoterica. Inside, the air smelled of incense and sage. It was a stark contrast to the metallic stench of the street. A woman with wild, poofy hair and dark makeup sat behind the counter, reading tarot cards. Usagi. She smiled, a genuine, warm expression. I didn't expect to see you. Is your spine acting up again? Just a checkup, Misty, Usagi said, his voice softer here. Is Vic in? He's in the basement. He's watching the boxing match. She looked at Izuku. Her eyes widened slightly. Oh. Who is this? He has a very bright aura. But it's sad. He's a relative, Usagi said quickly. From out of town. Misty nodded slowly, shuffling her cards. The magician, she whispered, flipping a card. Infinite possibility. But reversed, untapped potential, confusion. She looked at Izuku. Be careful, traveler. The path you're on has many forks. Thank you, Izuku said, bowing slightly. Usagi dragged him through the back gate and down the stairs. The clinic was a converted basement, filled with medical equipment, dentist chairs, and screens displaying biological schematics. A large man with glasses and a kind face was sitting in a swivel chair, watching a fight on a small TV. Vic, Usagi said. Vector spun around. Kid! Good to see you. How's the Sandevistan holding up? I told you to dial back the voltage. It's fine, Usagi said. But that's not why I'm here. He stepped aside, revealing Izuku. Victor adjusted his glasses. He looked from Usagi to Izuku, then back to Usagi. Well, Victor said, leaning back. That's a new one. Cloning? Or did you finally find that long-lost twin you never talk about? It's complicated, Usagi said. Scan him, Vic. Tell me I'm not crazy. Izuku sat in the patient chair. It was cold. Victor pulled a massive optical scanner over Izuku's face. Alright, relax, Victor said. Just gonna take a look under the hood. Blue light washed over Izuku. Screens on the wall began to populate with data. Victor frowned. He tapped the keyboard. He frowned deeper. This is weird, Victor muttered. What? Usagi asked, leaning over his shoulder. His cell structure, Victor said. It's dense. Extremely dense. His muscle fibers are woven tighter than anything I've seen in a baseline human. It's almost like he has subdermal armor, but it's biological. And his nervous system, it's conducting bioelectricity at a rate that should fry his brain, but it's stable. Victor pulled the scanner back. He looked at Izuku with clinical fascination. Zero cyberware. No neural link. No personal link. No shards. He is 100% organic. But this reading here. Victor pointed to the chest area on the screen. There's an energy signature in his core. It's not radiation. It's not thermal. It's alive. One for all, Izuku whispered. Whatever it is, Victor said, it's potent. Kid, if Arasaka got wind of your biology, they wouldn't just kill you. They'd put you in a jar and study you for 50 years. You are a walking biological singularity. Usagi rubbed his face. Great. Just great. So he's a target. A massive one, Victor agreed. But here's the kicker. His DNA matches yours, Usagi. Nearly 99.9%. The 0.1% difference? That energy signature. You two are the same person, but he evolved differently. Victor spun his chair to face Usagi. He's what you would have been if the world hadn't forced you to chop yourself up. Usagi went silent. He looked at his mechanical hands. He looked at Izuku's scarred, but flesh and blood hands. Can you install a personal link? Usagi asked suddenly. What? Victor asked. Why? He needs to interface, Usagi said. He can't use a phone, can't jack into a terminal, can't read a shard. He's blind and deaf in this city. If we're going to survive, he needs basic comms. Victor looked at Izuku. I can do a minimal install. A neurosocket behind the ear. Basic interface processor. It won't interfere with his, whatever that power is. Do it, Usagi said. Wait, Izuku said. You want to put a computer in my brain? It's not a computer, it's a phone, Usagi said. It lets me talk to you without shouting. It lets you see maps. It lets you survive. Do you trust me? Izuku looked at the alternate version of himself. He saw the fatigue in Usagi's eyes, the desperate need to keep Izuku safe because, in a way, it was like saving himself. I trust you, Izuku said. Alright, Victor grabbed a pneumatic injector. Bite down on this, kid. This is gonna sting. 1 hour later, Izuku touched the small, metal port behind his left ear. It throbbed slightly, but the pain was gone. Suddenly, text appeared in his vision. A floating HUD. System initialized. Welcome, user Midoriya. Connecting to local subnet. Connection established. Can you hear me? The voice was clear, ringing directly inside his auditory cortex. It was Usagi's voice, but without the external distortion. I can hear you, Izuku thought, realizing the tech picked up his sub-vocalizations. Good, Usagi said aloud. Now you're part of the grid. Victor wiped his hands on a rag. That's on the house, Usagi. But you owe me. Big time. I know, Vic. Thanks. Suddenly, Usagi's internal phone rang. His eyes flashed red as he took the call. Yeah? Wakako. I know I ghosted. A job? No, I'm busy. How much? Kontao prototype. That's heavy corporate heat, Wakako. Triple the rate? Fine. Send the coordinates. I need the eddies. Usagi hung up. He looked at Izuku. We have a problem, Usagi said. I need money to get you fake IDs, food, and maybe a way home. Fixer just offered a gig. High risk, high reward. I'm coming with you, Izuku said immediately. No, Usagi shook his head. It's a stealth raid. You're loud. You glow green. I can be quiet, Izuku insisted. I have other quirks. I can generate a smoke screen. I can float. And I have Black Whip for mobility. I can be your backup. Usagi weighed the options. He looked at Victor, who shrugged. He's strong, Usagi. And if things go south, having a tank like him might save your metal ass. Usagi sighed. Fine. But you follow my lead. No hero speeches. No saving the bad guys. We go in, we grab the tech, we get out. Clear? Izuku nodded, his face determined. Clear. Usagi threw him a headset. Then gear up, Deku. We're going to hunt some tiger claws. As Izuku adjusted his gloves, he felt a strange sensation. The silence in his head, it was shifting. The tech Victor installed was humming against the biology of One for All. Deep in the void, the first user stirred. Connection, re-establishing, signal, weak, but present. Izuku didn't hear it yet. But as he followed the chrome rabbit out into the neon rain, he knew one thing. The glitch in the system was about to go online. Watson District. The Little China Overpass. Vehicle, Thornton Galena Gecko. Heavily modified. Time, 10:45. The rain in Night City didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Izuku Midoriya sat in the passenger seat of Usagi's battered Thornton Galena, his forehead pressed against the cold glass. The world outside was a smear of neon kanji and holographic ads for real water, now with 2% real H2O. Inside his head, the world was even noisier. Incoming message. Wakako Okada attachment. Gig details _encrypted. Weather alert. Acid rain probability 40%. NCPD alert. Shots fired in Kabuki. The text scrolled across his peripheral vision in amber hues, courtesy of the neurosocket Victor had installed behind his left ear just 2 hours ago. It was disorienting. Every time he focused on a building, a tag popped up listing its structural integrity, owner, usually Arasaka or Militech, and current tenancy. Stop squinting, Usagi said, not looking away from the road. You look like you're trying to perform long division in your head. Just filter it. Blink twice rapidly to dismiss the HUD, or focus your eyes to the far right to minimize. Izuku blinked twice. The wall of text vanished, leaving only a small compass and a clock in the corner of his vision. It feels invasive, Izuku muttered, rubbing the sore spot behind his ear. Like there's someone whispering numbers into my brain. Better than being deaf, Usagi countered, shifting gears. The car's engine roared, a guttural, modified sound that vibrated through the bucket seats. Without a personal link, you can't pay for food, you can't open doors, and you can't receive mission updates. You were a ghost. Now you're just a glitch. Usagi was driving with one hand, a cigarette burning between his lips. His other hand, the mechanical one, rested on the gear stick. The heavy plating of his arm clicked against the metal knob. Where are we going? Izuku asked. You said the crew. Who are they? Edge runners. Usagi exhaled a plume of smoke. Mercenaries. We aren't friends. We're a pack of wolves that realize hunting together is more profitable than hunting alone. The leader is Maine. Big guy. Lots of chrome. Don't stare at his arms. And don't mention his size. Why? Because he's sensitive about going cyber psycho. And because he could crush your skull like a grape. Usagi signaled a hard right, the car drifting through a puddle of iridescent oil. There's Dorio, his right hand. Kiwi, our netrunner, she's the one who will try to hack you, so keep your firewall up. And Rebecca. She's a lot. Izuku absorbed the information. Do they know? About us? Usagi glanced at him. The resemblance between them was stark, even with Usagi's scars and cyberware. It was like looking at a photo of Izuku that had been crumpled up, burned, and smoothed back out. They know I have a brother coming into town, Usagi said dryly. They don't know you're an alternate dimension version of me with superpowers fueled by ghosts. Let's keep it that way. As far as they're concerned, you're organic. You're a biomorph freak from a Eurolab or something. It explains the muscle density without the chrome. I don't like lying to teammates, Izuku said, crossing his arms. Trust is the foundation of any hero team. Usagi slammed on the brakes, the car screeching to a halt in front of a rusted, corrugated iron gate. He turned to Izuku, his mismatching eyes narrowing. Listen to me, hero. Usagi spat the word like a curse. In this city, the truth gets you flatlined. You tell them you have a biological superpower that rivals a tactical nuke? One of them sells that info to Arasaka for 1,000,000 eddies within the hour. Maybe not Maine. But everyone has a price. You want to survive? You lie. Izuku held Usagi's gaze. He saw the paranoia etched into every line of his double's face. It wasn't malice. It was a survival mechanism honed by years of trauma. Okay, Izuku said softly. I'll follow your lead. But I won't let them get hurt. That's my condition, Usagi scoffed, turning back to the gate. Worry about yourself, kid. These guys eat corpo hit squads for breakfast. He pinged the gate with his internal link. The heavy iron doors groaned open. Santo Domingo, abandoned petrochem refinery. Time, 11:15. The meeting spot was a hollowed-out refinery warehouse, stripped of anything valuable years ago. Sunlight filtered through holes in the roof, illuminating dust motes dancing in the stagnant air. In the center of the vast space, a group of people sat on crates around a portable heater. Finally, a voice boomed. A man stood up. He was massive. A mountain of muscle and dark skin, but his arms were monstrous pistons of metal, the classic gorilla arms but oversized, fitted with projectile launch systems. This was Maine. Next to him was a muscular woman with blonde hair and similar heavy plating, Dorio, sitting cross-legged on a crate, smoking a thin cigarette with a detached, bored expression, was a woman with a red holographic mask over the lower half of her face, Kiwi, and bouncing a pistol on her knee was a diminutive girl with pale skin, green twintails, and red eyes, Rebecca. Kept us waiting, Rabbit, Maine grunted, crossing his arms. The servos in his shoulders whined. Who's the stray? Usagi stepped out of the car, his demeanor shifting instantly. He walked with a swagger, a dangerous edge to his step. Traffic in Japantown. Scavs blocked the highway. He jerked a thumb back at the car where Izuku was stepping out. This is Deku. He's new. Deku? Rebecca cackled, hopping off her crate. She was holding a shotgun that was almost as big as she was. What kind of gonk name is that? Sounds like a doll. She marched up to Izuku, poking him hard in the chest with the barrel of the gun. Izuku didn't flinch. He looked down at her with a polite, if slightly nervous, smile. It means you can do it, Izuku said automatically. Rebecca blinked. Then she snorted. Jesus, Usagi, where did you find this choir boy? He smells like soap. He's family, Usagi said, his voice hard. Distant. He needs work. I'm vouching for him. Kiwi looked up from her interface, her eyes glowing cool blue. Family? You look like clones. But he scans weird. Suddenly, Izuku felt a sharp pressure in his head, distinct from the danger sense. It was like a cold finger poking his brain. Unauthorized access attempt detected. Source, Kiwi. System, neurosocket firewall engaged. Don't bother, Kiwi, Usagi warned. His link is strictly comms. The rest of him is air-gapped. Air-gapped? Maine stepped closer, towering over Izuku. He sniffed the air. No chrome? At all? Kid looks like he does Pilates, sure, but we're hitting a Con Tau transport. If he can't tank a shot, he's dead weight. I can handle myself, Izuku said, meeting Main's gaze. He stood straight, not intimidated by the size difference. He had faced All for One. A big guy with robot arms wasn't going to make him back down. Main raised an eyebrow. Oh? Got some stones on you, huh? He's fast, Usagi interjected, stepping between them. And he hits hard. He's a genetic variant. Muscle density is triple the norm. Bioelectric conductivity is off the charts. Bioelectric? Rebecca's eyes lit up. Like a human taser? Nova. Can you jump-start a car? I haven't tried, Izuku admitted. Main looked skeptical. He turned to Usagi. We need a heavy hitter rabbit. Not a science experiment. If you want him on the cut, he needs to prove he's not going to bleed out in the first 5 seconds. A demo then, Usagi said. He had expected this. He unzipped his jacket, tossing it onto the hood of the car. Beneath, his tank top revealed the heavy scarring where metal met flesh. Me versus him. To first blood or submission, the crew perked up. Even Kiwi looked interested. Ooh, a domestic dispute. Rebecca cheered, hopping onto a stack of pallets to get a better view. 10 eddies on the chrome. The organic looks like he cries during commercials. I'll take that bet, Dorio said, leaning against the pillar. Usagi's been twitchy lately. He might overextend. Izuku looked at Usagi. We don't have to do this. Yes, we do, Usagi muttered, activating his Sandevistan. The spinal implant glowed a harsh, neon green. They respect strength, Izuku. Nothing else. Don't hold back. If you humiliate me, it's fine. Just don't let them think you're weak. Izuku took a deep breath. He spread his feet, dropping into a classic fighting stance. The air around him began to hum. One for all. Full cowl. 8%. Green lightning crackled around his body, arcing from his skin. The dust on the floor swirled away from his boots. Whoa, Main muttered. That ain't tech. Ready? Usagi asked, his voice distorting as his time dilation software kicked in. Ready, Izuku said. The spar. Simulation. Combat mode. To the onlookers, Usagi vanished. The Sandevistan Mark IV allowed the user to move at speeds that rendered them a blur to the naked human eye. Usagi crossed the 20-meter gap in a fraction of a second, his mechanical fist aimed squarely at Izuku's liver. Danger sense. The warning didn't come as a sound, but as a jolt of awareness. Left side. Low. Izuku didn't need to see Usagi. He trusted the quirk. He pivoted his hips, sliding his left foot back. Whoosh. Usagi's fist occupied the space where Izuku's ribs had been a microsecond before. The air pressure from the punch blew Izuku's bangs back. He dodged? Rebecca gasped. Nobody dodges the Sandy. Usagi, moving in accelerated time, saw Izuku move. How? He doesn't have a reflex booster. He reacted before I even finished the swing. Usagi didn't pause. He spun, activating the blade in his boot heel, aiming a high kick at Izuku's head. Izuku ducked, the blade slicing a lock of his green hair. He's fast, Izuku analyzed rapidly. Mechanical acceleration. But he moves in linear vectors. Once he commits to a trajectory, he can't alter it easily without damaging his joints. He has momentum, but I have flow. Izuku caught Usagi's leg mid-swing. The metal was cold and heavy. Smash! Izuku didn't strike Usagi. He struck the air next to Usagi's chest with a focused blast of wind pressure. Boom! The shockwave sent Usagi skidding backward across the concrete. He dug his metal fingers into the floor to slow himself, leaving deep gouges in the cement. Okay, Usagi grinned, a feral expression overtaking his face. Not bad, mirror image. But you're pulling your punches. I don't want to break you, Izuku said earnestly. Wrong answer. Usagi tapped his chest. Limiters off. He engaged the Sandevistan again, but this time, he activated his monowire. The glowing orange filament whipped out from his wrist, lashing through the air like a snake made of plasma. Don't kill him, Usagi! Dorio shouted. The wire slashed toward Izuku. This wasn't a blunt impact. This was a cutting edge that could slice through diamond. Izuku's eyes widened. Black whip! 6 tendrils of black energy erupted from Izuku's back. They moved with a sentient fluidity, intercepting the monowire. Clash! The energies met, technological plasma against the crystallized quirk energy of the fifth user. Sparks showered the warehouse. The black whip tendrils wrapped around the monowire, neutralizing its movement. What the hell is that? Kiwi stood up, her cool demeanor shattering. Is that a bioweapon? Hard light construct? Usagi was shocked. His wire was caught. He yanked, but Izuku was an anchor. Get over here! Izuku shouted, mimicking a move he'd seen in movies. He retracted Black Whip, pulling Usagi toward him. Usagi flew through the air, off balance. Izuku prepared a punch. He dialed it up. 15%. But as Usagi flew closer, Izuku saw the panic in his eyes. Not fear of pain, but fear of failure. Fear of looking weak in front of the predators he called friends. Izuku hesitated. If I knock him out cold, he loses status. He's the leader of this operation's stealth element. I can't undermine him. In that split second of hesitation, Usagi recovered. He twisted his body in midair, using the momentum of the pull to swing his legs around. He caught Izuku's neck in a scissor hold with his heavy, reinforced thighs. Gravity took over. They crashed to the ground, Usagi on top. Usagi didn't hesitate. He jammed the barrel of his Omaha pistol against Izuku's forehead. Bang, Usagi whispered, breathing heavily. Sweat dripped from his nose onto Izuku's mask. The warehouse was silent. The green lightning around Izuku faded. The black whip tendrils dissolved into smoke. Yield, Izuku said calmly. Usagi held the gun there for a second longer, his hand shaking slightly. Then, he holstered it and rolled off, lying on his back on the dusty floor. Damn, Maine whistled. That was something. Rebecca was clapping. That was preem. Did you see the black tentacle things? It was like hentai, but violent. Rebecca! Dorio chided. Usagi sat up, wiping grime from his face. He looked at Izuku. He knew. He knew Izuku had pulled that last punch. He knew that if Izuku had wanted to, he could have smashed Usagi into the ceiling before the leg lock. You're hired, Usagi grunted, standing up and offering a hand to Izuku. Izuku took it. The metal hand was cold, but the grip was firm. Thanks, Izuku said. The briefing. Time, 12:30. They sat in a circle again, eating synthetic pizza from a box. It tasted like ketchup on a sponge, but Izuku was famished. All right, listen up, Maine said, pointing to a holographic map projected in the center of the circle. The target is a Kong Tao convoy. Armored transport, 3 escort vehicles. They're moving a Class S asset from the Badlands into the city center. What's the asset? Izuku asked. Don't know, don't care, Kiwi replied, typing on a datapad. Wakako's client pays for the box, not what's inside. But the encryption on the manifest is heavy. It's biological containment. Biological? Izuku frowned. Are they trafficking people? It's a corp, kid, Maine laughed bitterly. Everything is a product. People, organs, souls. Kong Tao specializes in smart weapons, but they dabble in biotech. Maine highlighted a route on the map. We hit them here. The tunnel under Japantown. It's a blind spot for the satellite grid. Kiwi jams the comms. Rebecca and Dorio set up the roadblock with explosives. Usagi, you and the new guy hit the transport. Maine looked at Izuku. You said you can create a smokescreen? Yes, Izuku nodded. Purple fog. Obscures vision and thermal optics to a degree. Perfect, Maine grinned, showing gold teeth. You smoke him out. Usagi uses his sandy to neutralize the guards before they know they're blind. Then we crack the shell and grab the package. What about casualties? Izuku asked. The group went quiet. What about them? Rebecca asked, chewing on a piece of pepperoni. I mean the guards. The drivers. We don't have to kill them, right? If we incapacitate them. Kid, Maine sighed, leaning forward. His heavy arms rested on his knees. These are Kong Tao operatives. They have smart guns that lock onto your brainstem. They have combat stims that make them fight until their hearts explode. If you hesitate, you die. And worse, you get us killed. I can disarm them, Izuku insisted. I'm fast enough. I won't kill. You're a liability, Kiwi said flatly. No, Usagi spoke up. He was leaning against a pillar, cleaning his monowire. He's not. I saw him in the alley. He took out 3 scavs without flatlining them. He broke bones, sure. But they lived. If he wants to play pacifist, let him. As long as the enemy stops shooting, I don't care if they're dead or napping. Maine looked between the two of them. Fine. You want to be Batman? Be Batman. But if one of those guards gets back up and aims at Dorio, I'm turning him into paste. Understand? Izuku nodded solemnly. Understood. Good. We roll out at 2000 hours. Get some rest. Check your gear. Maine stood up, signaling the meeting was over. The roof. Time, 1400 hours. Izuku found Usagi sitting on the edge of the warehouse roof, legs dangling over the edge. The view was a sprawling industrial wasteland, pipes and smokestacks stretching to the horizon under a gray sky. Izuku sat down next to him. You let me win, Usagi said, not looking at him. I didn't let you win, Izuku corrected. I chose not to escalate. There's a difference. Semantics. Usagi lit a cigarette. Why do you care so much? About not killing? In your world, do villains just go to jail? And stay there? Sometimes they break out, Izuku admitted, thinking of Tartarus. But yes. We believe in rehabilitation. We believe that power is a responsibility, not a license to judge. Must be nice, Usagi exhaled smoke. Here, the prisons are just recruitment centers for the Corps. Or organ farms. There is no rehabilitation in Night City, Izuku. You either run the edge or you fall off. He tapped the metal plating on his leg. You know what cyberpsychosis is? Vic mentioned it. A mental breakdown caused by too many implants? It's not just the implants, Usagi said softly. It's the dissociation. You replace your hand, and you lose the ability to feel a warm touch. You replace your eyes, and the world becomes data. You replace your spine, and you stop feeling the weight of your own body. Usagi turned to Izuku, his eyes hauntingly sad. Eventually you forget you're human. You start seeing people as just meat. Bags of blood and calcium that are easy to pop. And when that happens, you start laughing while you kill. That's the end. He looked at his mechanical hand, clenching it into a fist. I feel it sometimes. The edge. It's like a buzz in the back of my head. Telling me to just cut the wire. Let go. Izuku reached out and placed his hand, his warm, scarred, flesh and blood hand, over Usagi's cold metal fist. You're not a machine, Usagi, Izuku said firmly. You still feel. You felt anger when you talked about your mom. You felt pride when you fought me. You felt fear for your team. As long as you feel that, you're human. Usagi looked at Izuku's hand. He didn't pull away. You're a weird guy, Deku, Usagi muttered. I get that a lot. Hey, Usagi said, changing the subject. That black whip thing. Can you teach me to use my monowire like that? You were using it for mobility, not just cutting. Izuku smiled. Sure. It's all about anchor points and centrifugal force. If you adjust your wrist tension. For the next hour, on the roof of a ruined warehouse in a dystopian hellscape, 2 versions of the same boy sat and talked. Not about philosophy or death, but about technique. About movement. For a brief moment, they weren't a mercenary and a lost hero. They were just 2 nerds, geeking out over quirk analysis and cyberspecs. Below them, the city churned, indifferent and cruel. But up here, there was a quiet understanding. One more thing, Usagi said, standing up and crushing his cigarette. Yeah, Maine likes you. He won't admit it, but he respects anyone who can put me on my ass. Usagi smirked. But Kiwi doesn't trust you. Watch your back with her. She'll dig until she finds dirt. I have nothing to hide, Izuku said. Everyone has something to hide, Izuku. Usagi pulled his collar up. Let's go. We have a convoy to hijack. Japantown Tunnel. Time, 2015. The tunnel was bathed in sodium orange light. It was quiet, save for the hum of ventilation fans. Izuku crouched on a catwalk high above the road. He was wearing his torn hero costume, but Usagi had tossed him a black tactical vest to wear over it, giving him a slightly more militaristic silhouette. Position check, Maine's voice crackled over the comms. Kiwi green. Jammer is hot. Dorio, green. Charge is set. Rebecca, green. I'm bored. Can I shoot something yet? Usagi Green. Deku is with me, Copy Main said. Target is 2 clicks out. ETA 1 minute. Remember the plan. Clean hit. No Kalbas. Izuku's heart pounded. This wasn't a villain attack. This was a premeditated ambush. He felt dirty. But he remembered Usagi's words, use the system to survive the system. If I'm here, I can ensure nobody dies, Izuku reminded himself. That's my mission. The rumble of heavy engines echoed in the tunnel. 3 massive, black-armored SUVs appeared, flanking a central transport truck that looked like a bank vault on wheels. The Kong-Tao logos emblazoned on the side gleamed in the tunnel lights. Now! Main roared. Boom! The charges at the far end of the tunnel detonated, dropping tons of concrete onto the road, blocking the exit. The convoy slammed on the brakes, tires screeching. Kiwi, lights! The tunnel plunged into darkness as Kiwi hacked the city grid. Deku, smoke! Usagi ordered. Izuku took a deep breath. 6th user, lend me your power. Smoke screen. Purple fog erupted from his body, pouring down from the catwalk like a waterfall. It filled the tunnel instantly, thick and opaque. Hostiles blind, Izuku reported. Showtime, Usagi whispered. The green line of the Sandavistan lit up on Usagi's back. He dropped from the catwalk, slowing time. To Izuku, Usagi was a blur. He landed on the roof of the lead SUV. He didn't shoot. He punched through the sunroof, ripped the driver out, and tossed him aside before the man could even reach for his gun. Izuku jumped down after him, using Black Whip to swing toward the rear guard vehicle. Guards were piling out, confused, their smartlinks unable to lock onto targets in the dense smoke. Fire blindly! A commander screamed. Bullets began to spray the tunnel. Izuku landed in the middle of a squad of 4 guards. They turned their rifles toward the sound. Danger sense. Izuku ducked under a hail of gunfire. He swept the legs of the first guard, grabbed the rifle barrel of the second, and bent it upwards with 5% strength. Sorry! Izuku apologized as he chopped the third guard on the back of the neck, knocking him unconscious. What the? He's moving too fast! A guard yelled. Izuku grabbed the 4th guard by the vest and threw him, gently, into a pile of trash bags. Clear! Izuku shouted. Lead vehicle clear! Usagi called out. Rear vehicle clear! Main shouted from the other end. He had simply walked up to the car, ripped the door off, and punched the engine block. The only thing left was the transport truck in the middle. The smoke began to clear slightly. The crew gathered around the massive vehicle. Kiwi, crack it, Main ordered. Kiwi stepped forward, extending a personal link wire from her wrist to the truck's port. Her eyes glowed. Encryption is heavy, she muttered. Ice is thick, wait. This isn't standard Kong-Tao protocol. This is Arasaka code wrapped in a Kong-Tao shell. What does that mean? Dorio asked, checking her ammo. It means this isn't just a prototype weapon, Usagi said, his voice tense. It's something they stole from Arasaka. Got it, Kiwi said. The lock hissed. The heavy rear doors of the truck groaned open. Steam poured out of the refrigerated interior. Izuku stepped forward, peering into the darkness. What is it? Rebecca asked, hopping on her toes. A big gun? A mech? The steam cleared. Inside the truck, strapped to a vertical medical table, hooked up to dozens of tubes and wires, was not a weapon. It was a young girl. Maybe 10 years old. Her skin was pale blue, circuitry visible beneath her translucent dermis. Her head was shaved, revealing a massive port in her skull that glowed with data streams. She opened her eyes. They were entirely black, filled with scrolling green code. Help me, she whispered. Izuku froze. A kid? Main grunted. The package is a kid? She's a Netrunner proxy, Kiwi said, her voice shaking slightly. A human CPU. They wiped her personality to use her brain for processing data. Highly illegal. Even for core. We get paid for the package, Usagi said, his voice devoid of emotion, though his fist was clenched. Grab her. Let's go. No, Izuku said. The word hung in the air. Izuku turned to face his team, placing himself between them and the girl. Green lightning began to flicker around him, brighter this time. We are not selling a child, Izuku said, his voice trembling with rage. I don't care how much the fixer pays. I don't care about the rules of this city. We are not doing this. Maine took a step forward, his mechanical arms whirring. Kid! Step aside. We have a contract. Then break it, Izuku growled. Or you'll have to go through me. Usagi stepped up, standing shoulder to shoulder with Maine. He looked at his alternate self. Izuku, Usagi warned, his hand hovering over his pistol. Don't do this. You're declaring war on the fixer. On the team. I'm saving her, Izuku said, looking Usagi in the eye. And deep down, I know you want to as well. The standoff in the tunnel was electric. Idealism against survival. And in the distance, the sound of approaching sirens grew louder. Max Tack was coming. Jigjig Street, Westbrook, Wakako's pachinko parlor. Time, 1400 hours, day 2. The air inside the parlor was thick enough to chew. It tasted of synthetic tobacco, cheap perfume, and the distinct, metallic tang of overheated server racks. The cacophony was a physical weight, a wall of electronic chirps, the cascading rattle of thousands of steel balls, and the thumping bass of pop music bleeding in from the street outside. Izuku Midoriya stood by the door, his back rigid. He was wearing the oversized gray trench coat Usagi had given him, the collar pulled up to hide his face. Beneath it, his hero costume felt like a second skin that no longer fit the world he was in. Stop fidgeting, Usagi murmured. He was leaning against a pillar, arms crossed, the red optic in his right eye cycling through threat assessments of every patron in the room. You look like an arc. I'm not fidgeting, Izuku whispered back, tapping the neuroport behind his ear. There are so many people. And my danger sense is buzzing. Not a spike, just a constant hum. Like static. That's just the ambient malice of Westbrook, Usagi deadpanned. Relax. We're here to see the Queen of Fixers. Show some respect. They walked through the aisles of trance-induced gamblers. Men and women hooked up to the machines via personal links, their eyes glazed over, mouths hanging open as they chased a digital dopamine hit. At the back of the room, behind a beaded curtain, sat Wakako Okada. She was an elderly woman with sharp features and even sharper eyes. She smoked a long, thin pipe, her fingers tracing the screen of a datapad. She didn't look up as they entered. Usagi, she said, her voice like crinkling parchment. And the new addition. Maine speaks highly of his performance in the tunnel. Though he says the boy has a bleeding heart. He gets the job done, Wakako, Usagi said, stepping forward. We secured the transport container from the tunnel job. But it's bio-locked. We can't open it, and we can't deliver it without the decryption key. Correct, Wakako finally looked up. Her eyes were milky with cataracts, but the implants behind them whirred with predatory focus. The client is impatient. The container is useless without the control shard. And my sources tell me the Tiger Claws, specifically a lieutenant named Sato, are holding the shard at a penthouse in Westbrook. She slid a data shard across the table. Retrieve the shard. Zero Sato if you must. But bring me the key. The payout for the container is on hold until the job is complete. Usagi picked up the shard and slotted it into the port in his neck. His eyes flashed as he downloaded the mission data. Penthouse raid, Usagi muttered. High security. Tiger claws are dug in deep there. This isn't a smash and grab. That is why I am paying you a premium, Wakako smiled, revealing gold teeth. Do not disappoint me, Rabbit. I would hate to have to scrap you for parts. The van, Main Chevalier Thrax, en route to Westbrook. Time, 15:30. The crew was crammed into the back of Main's heavy transport van. The mood was tense. So let me get this straight, Rebecca said, polishing her shotgun with a dirty rag. We have a mystery box in the trunk that we can't open, and now we have to break into a Tiger Claw fortress to find the key? Sounds like a lot of work for a paycheck we haven't seen yet. Wakako pays, Main rumbled from the driver's seat. Eventually. Besides, the payout on this is triple the usual rate. Enough for us all to take a month off. Izuku sat near the rear doors, looking at the black, coffin-sized container they had stolen the night before. He placed a hand on it. It was cold. He could feel a faint vibration coming from inside. There's someone in there, Izuku thought. I know what Usagi said about it being tech, but my quirk, the vestiges. I feel a life force. Hey, Greenie, Dorio called out, snapping him out of his trance. Eyes up. Briefing. Kiwi projected a holographic map of the building into the center of the van. Target is the penthouse of the Cloud 9 megatower, Kiwi explained, her voice bored. Sato is paranoid. He has automated turrets in the hall, and a private guard detail of elite claws. Heavy chrome, Sandavistans, mantis blades, the works. We can't go in loud, Usagi said, pointing to the map. If we trigger the alarm, NCPD response time in this district is under 2 minutes. We need to be ghosts. I like ghosts, Rebecca grumbled. But I like explosions better. Stealth, Usagi insisted, looking at Izuku. That means no lightning, Deku. No smashing walls unless it's an emergency. Izuku nodded. I can do stealth. I have a quirk, an ability, called Black Whip. I can use it to scale the outside of the building. I can enter from the balcony while you take the maintenance elevator. Main turned around, looking at Izuku. You sure, kid? That's a 60-story climb. One slip and your pavement pizza. I won't slip, Izuku said confidently. And about the guards. The van went silent. Usagi pinched the bridge of his nose. Here we go. We don't have to kill them, Izuku said, his voice firm. If this is a stealth mission, knocking them unconscious is quieter than gunshots. Dead bodies leave blood. Blood smells. Unconscious bodies can be hidden. Kiwi tilted her head. Logic is sound. But risky. Sedatives take time. Chokeholds take time. A bullet is instant. I can be instant, Izuku said. I can move faster than they can react. Please. Just let me try. Main sighed, looking at Usagi. He's your clone, Rabbit. You make the call. Usagi looked at Izuku. He saw the stubborn set of his jaw. He remembered the fight in the warehouse, how Izuku had pulled his punch. Fine, Usagi said. We try it your way. Non-lethal takedowns. But the moment, the exact second, things go sideways, the kid gloves come off. We switch to live fire. No arguments. Agreed, Izuku said. Don't make me regret this, Usagi warned. Cloud 9 megatower. Exterior wall/50th floor. Time, 16:15. The wind at 50 stories up was a howling beast. It whipped Izuku's hair into his eyes and tore at his trench coat, which he had discarded in the van for better mobility. He was clinging to the side of the glass and steel monolith. Black whip tendrils, glowing with a faint, smoky energy, were wrapped around the architectural fins of the building. Fifth user, hold steady, Izuku thought. I've got you, kid. But don't look down. This city is ugly from every angle. Izuku swung upward, releasing one tendril and shooting another to grab a ledge 3 floors up. He moved with the fluidity of a spider, silent and efficient. Inside the building, through the polarized glass, he could see office workers droning away at terminals, completely unaware of the heroes scaling their tower. Comm check. Deku, you in position? Usagi's voice rang in his head. Almost, Izuku sub-vocalized. Approaching the penthouse balcony. 2 guards visible. They have thermal optics. Kiwi is looping the camera feed. You have a 10-second window before the balcony sweep. Go. Izuku vaulted over the railing of the penthouse terrace. He landed silently on the marble floor. 2 tiger claw guards were standing by the sliding glass doors. They wore traditional Japanese robes over heavy body armor, katanas slung at their hips alongside smart SMGs. Izuku didn't give them time to turn. One for all, full cowl. 5%. He dashed. A green blur. He struck the first guard in the solar plexus, not enough to shatter ribs, but enough to seize the diaphragm. The guard crumpled. As he fell, Izuku spun and delivered a high-speed roundhouse kick to the second guard's helmet. Thwack. Both guards hit the floor. Silent. Unconscious. Clear, Izuku whispered, dragging the bodies behind a decorative planter. Nova, Rebecca's voice crackled. We're in the service elevator. Usagi is hacking the keypad. Meet us in the atrium. Izuku crept to the glass doors. He placed his hand on the lock. It was electronic. Shoot. I can hack. He looked around. He saw a panel on the wall. He remembered what Usagi told him about forcing a connection if you didn't have a port. You couldn't, but he had strength. He jammed his fingers into the gap between the doors. Sorry about the property damage, he muttered. With a grunt of exertion, he forced the heavy, bulletproof glass to slide open, stripping the gears. It made a grinding noise, but the ambient music from the party inside masked it. He slipped inside. The penthouse was opulent. Gold statues, real wood floors, and a holographic aquarium that spanned the entire ceiling. It was a display of wealth that made the poverty of Kabuki feel like a different planet. Izuku moved through the shadows of the lounge. He saw the team entering from the hallway. Usagi, Main, and Dorio. They were moving quietly, weapons drawn but lowered. Sato's office is upstairs, Usagi signaled with hand signs. Kiwi says the shard is in a safe behind his desk. They moved as a unit. Izuku took the rear, watching their six. Everything was going perfectly, until they reached the staircase. A door opened to their left. A young man, barely older than Izuku, stumbled out. He wasn't a guard. He was a server, carrying a tray of empty synth wine glasses. He looked like he was high on something, his eyes unfocused. He bumped straight into Main. The tray crashed to the floor. Glass shattered. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence. The server looked up, eyes widening as he saw Main's massive, gunmetal arms. He opened his mouth to scream. Usagi moved instantly. His monowire extended, glowing orange. He raised his arm to decapitate the witness before a sound could escape. No! Izuku whispered, his body moving on instinct. He reached out and grabbed Usagi's wrist, stopping the strike inches from the boy's neck. Don't! Izuku hissed. He's a civilian! The delay was fatal. The server scrambled back, hyperventilating. He fumbled for a panic button on the wall. Usagi ripped his arm free from Izuku's grip. You idiot! Usagi lunged, but the server slammed his palm onto the red panel. Alarm! Alarm! Intruder alert! The penthouse lights turned crimson. Heavy shutters slammed down over the windows. We're blown! Main roared, bringing up his projectile launcher. Cover! From the top of the stairs, a heavy blast door opened. Tiger claws poured out, weapons blazing. The firefight. Time, 16:25. You happy now, hero? Usagi screamed over the roar of gunfire. He slid behind a marble countertop as bullets chewed through the stone. We lost the element of surprise because you wanted to save the waiter. He wasn't a threat. Izuku shouted back, creating a smokescreen to cover their flank. He pressed the button. That makes him a combatant. Bullets whizzed past Izuku's ear. He could feel danger sense screaming constantly now. The room was a kill box. Dorio, flank left. Rebecca, suppressive fire. Main barked orders, his arm cannon firing a micro-missile that blew a group of claws off the balcony. Ha ha! Die, trash! Rebecca was standing on a coffee table, dual-wielding pistols, laughing maniacally as she turned the expensive furniture into splinters. Izuku tried to help. He saw a guard taking aim at Dorio. He used Black Whip to yank the gun away. Gun secured. Izuku yelled, "Just shoot him, you gonk!" Dorio yelled back, taking a hit to her shoulder plating. She didn't flinch, returning fire with a heavy machine gun. The enemies here were different from the street thugs. They were elites. A blur of motion cut through the smoke. A tiger claw with mantis blades, swords extending from his forearms, lunged at Izuku. Izuku dodged, the blades sparking against the floor. Die, intruder! The cyborg screamed. Izuku blocked the next strike with his iron soul, kicking the man back. Stay down! Never! The cyborg engaged a reflex booster, moving faster. He slashed at Izuku's throat. Izuku caught the blade between his gloved hands. He could feel the heat of the metal. He twisted, shattering the blade, then delivered a punch to the man's gut. The cyborg flew back unconscious. One down! Izuku called out. There's 20 more! Usagi yelled. Suddenly, the ceiling vent exploded. A heavy cyborg, a mini-boss, dropped down. He was outfitted with a heavy machine gun grafted directly to his torso. Sato. Main identified him. Focus fire! Sato unleashed a torrent of lead. The team was pinned. The marble counter was disintegrating. I can't get a clear shot, Rebecca cursed. He's got a personal shield generator. Izuku looked at the situation. They were trapped. Main and Dorio were taking heavy hits. If this continued, they would die. I have to draw his fire, Izuku thought. Cover me! Izuku shouted. Don't do it, Deka! Usagi warned. Izuku jumped over the cover. One for all, full cowl. 20%. He moved in a zigzag pattern, green lightning tearing up the floor. Sato tracked him, the heavy gun swiveling. Danger sense. Izuku dodged a stream of bullets, feeling the heat singe his cheek. He closed the distance. Manchester. Smash! He delivered an axe kick to Sato's energy shield. The shield flickered and shattered under the impact of One for All. Shield down! Izuku yelled. Sato snarled, dropping his gun and swinging a massive, hydraulic fist at Izuku. Izuku caught the fist. The ground cracked beneath his feet. The contest of strength was immense. Biological power versus hydraulic pressure. Now Usagi! Izuku screamed. He expected Usagi to shoot Sato, to disable the cyberware. Instead, a blur of motion passed him. Usagi engaged his Sandavistan. He moved past Izuku, past the lock struggle. With a cold, precise movement, Usagi wrapped his monowire around Sato's neck. He pulled. There was a wet sound. Izuku felt the resistance in Sato's fist vanish. The cyborg's head slid off his shoulders. The body went limp, collapsing onto Izuku. Oil and blood sprayed over Izuku's face. Izuku stood there, frozen, holding the hand of a headless corpse. Objective clear, Usagi said, his voice flat. He reached into Sato's pocket and pulled out the decryption shard. I got the key. The remaining guards, seeing their leader decapitated, hesitated. Clean them up! Main roared. The rest of the fight was a massacre. Without their leader, the claws broke formation. Rebecca and Main mowed them down. Usagi moved like a grim reaper, silencing anyone who twitched. Izuku stood in the center of the room, wiping the blood from his eyes. He felt sick. We have to go. Usagi grabbed Izuku's arm, his grip bruising. NCPD is 30 seconds out. The getaway. Mega building parking structure. Time, 16:45. They piled into the van. Main slammed the accelerator, and they peeled out of the garage just as the sirens of Max Tack wailed around the corner. The drive back to the safe house was silent. No one celebrated. Izuku sat in the back, staring at his hands. They were trembling. We got the shard, Kiwi broke the silence, twirling the chip in her fingers. The gig is done. Yeah, Main grunted, clutching his side where a bullet had pierced his armor. But that was messy. Too messy. The van screeched to a halt in the alley behind the safe house. Before Izuku could unbuckle, the rear doors flew open. Usagi grabbed Izuku by the collar of his trench coat and hauled him out of the van. He threw him against the brick wall. Pow! Usagi punched him. It wasn't a super-powered punch. It was a human punch, driven by raw frustration. It hit Izuku in the jaw, snapping his head back. Izuku tasted copper. He looked up, shocked. What? Shut up! Usagi screamed, shoving him again. Shut your mouth! The rest of the crew gathered around, watching. Main stepped forward to intervene, but Dorio held him back. Let them sort it out. Usagi was breathing hard, his face twisted in a snarl. His optics were glowing dangerously bright. You almost got us killed, Usagi hissed, getting right in Izuku's face. You hesitated. You grabbed my arm. In the middle of an infiltration, he was a civilian! Izuku shouted back, his own anger rising. He was just a waiter. We don't kill innocent people. There are no innocent people here. Usagi roared. That waiter? He pressed the button. He called the hit squad. Because you wanted to spare him, Dorio took a round to the chest. Main took shrapnel. I almost got zeroed by a turret. Usagi pointed a finger at Izuku's chest. You save the bad guy, you kill your team. That is the rule. That is the physics of this world. Your morality? It's a luxury we can't afford. It's expensive. And today, the price was almost our lives. Izuku wiped the blood from his lip. He looked at the team. Main was bandaging his arm. Rebecca was checking her ammo, avoiding his eyes. Even Kiwi looked cold. They agreed with Usagi. I can't just turn it off, Izuku said, his voice cracking. I can't just stop caring about life. If I do that, if I become like you, then what's the point of having this power? If I use one for all to murder, then I'm just another villain. I'm just all for one. Then go home, Usagi spat. Go back to your superhero high school where the bad guys go to jail, and everyone gets a medal. Because here? You're not a hero, Deku. You're a hazard. Usagi turned his back and walked toward the safe house door. We have the key, Usagi called out to the crew. Let's open the box. See what we almost died for. Izuku stood alone in the rain for a moment. The water washed the blood off his face, but it couldn't wash away the feeling of failure. He had saved the waiter. But looking at Main's bleeding arm, he wondered if Usagi was right. Is it possible to be a symbol of peace in a world built on war? He tightened his fists. I have to find a way. I have to prove to them, and to myself, that there's another way. He followed them inside. The safe house. Time, 17:30. The black container sat on the table. It was ominous, humming with that low vibration. Main stood over it. Kiwi, slot the shard. Kiwi inserted the bloody chip they had taken from Sato's corpse into the container's port. Access granted? Decrypting. Stasis lock disengaged. Heavy pneumatic hisses filled the room. The lid of the container split down the middle and retracted. Cold fog rolled out. The crew leaned in. Lying on the padded interior was not a weapon. It wasn't a prototype gun or a cyberskeleton. It was the girl. The same girl Izuku had sensed. She looked small, frail. Her skin was a pale, synthetic blue. Wires trailed from her scalp, pulsing with light. She opened her eyes. Black sclera. Glowing green irises filled with scrolling data. She looked at Usagi. Then she looked at Izuku. She pointed a trembling finger at Izuku. Ghost. She whispered. Green. Ghost. It's a kid, Main said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Khan Tao was trafficking a kid? Not just a kid, Kiwi said, her eyes widening as she scanned the girl with her optics. Look at her neural signature. She's a Class 5 processing unit. They wiped her conscious mind. They turned her brain into a decryption algorithm for corporate data mining. She's a slave, Izuku breathed, horror washing over him. She's a payday, Usagi said. But his voice lacked conviction. He was staring at the girl, and his hand was shaking. The fixer's message pinged on everyone's HUD. Wakako, excellent work. A transport is en route to collect the package. Do not interact with the asset. Payment upon delivery. The room went silent. Usagi looked at the message. Then he looked at the girl. Then he looked at Izuku. The friction from the raid was still there. The anger was still hot. But now, a new problem sat on the table. We hand her over, Usagi said, though he sounded like he was trying to convince himself. That was the deal. We get paid. We survive. No, Izuku said softly. He didn't shout this time. He didn't activate his quirk. He just stood between the container and the door. Move, Deku, Usagi warned. You said I was a hazard, Izuku said, meeting his double's gaze. You said my morality was expensive. Well, how much is she worth? How many eddies is a child's life worth to you, Usagi? Usagi clenched his jaw. He looked at Main. Main looked away, rubbing his neck. It's a lot of money, kid, Main muttered. Enough to get new lungs. Enough to leave the city. But you won't be able to sleep, Izuku said. I know you. All of you. You're not scavs. You're not monsters. Usagi stared at the girl. She reached out and grabbed his metal finger. Help, she croaked. Usagi froze. The touch seemed to burn him. He looked at his hand, the hand that had killed her captors. The hand that had failed to save his mother. The rain hammered against the window. The transport was coming. The gig was preem. The vibes were bad, and the choice they made next would burn the city down.